So as part of the course in Acts, we understood that the Great Commission was fulfilled through the planting of churches, establishing of those communities, and looking at geographical strategic spreading of the gospel through the planting of churches. So now in the second course, that is Pauline, we are working on to see look at the concept of establishing and how Paul established the churches. And in that process, we know the tools that he used were personal visits, sending emissaries, writing letters, praying for them. Those were the common ways by which Paul worked to establish his churches. We also are aware of the fact that Paul, the establishing of a founded church was more critical than going to plant a new church. It was his prerogative. His prerogative was always to establish a church, or a church that had difficulties to move in and help and support that church. So we are able to see that Paul prioritized establishing once it is establishing a founded church rather than going to plant a new church. So that was a very powerful idea that we need to look at. Then we went on to look at in Unit 2 what is a New Testament local church. So we had different ideas we looked at, and so we did a lot of biblical theology and looked at what all included, what were the things that happened. How would you call a church, then a gathering of people, the comparisons and things like that, so that in our context, we should be careful what is called a church and what is not a church. We should be aware of that by developing a biblical theology. Then he goes into the nuts and bolts of establishing a church, and he starts off with the household codes, wherein there is the individual household codes and the general corporate church household codes, which is church is also considered as a household or a home, or a church is considered as a family of families. So it is important that we establish the individual families and we establish the church as a whole, as a family. So this process of establishing, going to the nuts and bolts of establishing a church, Paul was keen to see that individual households are established, that there is a house order, the house laws, and then he would look at the house order and house laws of the church. In that respect, we have several senior, very well-known authors like Stephen Clark and David C. Verner, Von Poitras, who have written and which we have read. We primarily, they all spoke primarily of the complementarian view, wherein which, according to them, Apostle Paul was establishing the house codes or the household order for the individual churches, individual households, in setting the order wherein the husband is the head, the wife is the support, and through this relationship, they are able to carry out the purposes of God, and together they would be able to complement the household of God by being an established individual church household unit. That's what we have covered till now. Of course, we have argued on the models. We have argued on the whether it is complementarian, egalitarian, or the oneness model. We have different views. We looked at a complementarian view in detail, showing how a complementarian view also can be beneficial, and we looked at how submission and authority can play a role in building a community, and how we can actually pass on values to the next generation. So I think we have come till there, and we looked at Robert Banks and the community as a family and community as a body last time. And today Subhash is going to start off with the household and the household of God in the church of the pastorals. In the community as a family and community as a body, we talked, I am not able to recollect, Shruti and Elijah had taken in detail. One second, let me just get there, just to recollect. We talked about the metaphors.
The use of metaphors.
Yeah, the use of different metaphors to understand the whole idea. And body metaphor. So community as a body metaphor, and then the community as a family metaphor. Those are the two things that has been done there. I think those are simple articles, very easy to read and understand. So we have till there completed, but I'd like to look at the Socratic questions today. So a little bit, the competency we are going to work with is develop a basic biblical understanding of the philosophy that is to drive the ministry of the church, and the instructions, that is the house order by which each local church is to abide. So we need, the competency has we have to develop a biblical philosophy. So that is basically a theology, biblical theology, basically on what drives the ministry of the church according to the apostles, according to Paul. And then also a significant note on the house codes. That's what we need to be kind of putting down in the competency. I think you have plenty of material to work with. I don't think there is, you would have a problem in putting about 15 pages of this thing. Would be very, very easy.
This is the structure which I've given in the answer key, which we had discussed last time. So, so that is a good model to follow, Pastor.
That is what Jeff has given in the book.
Yes, Pastor. I think last week you had.
Yeah, we read it. We read it. That may be too elaborate. Yeah, but yeah, that would be that's around the idea of it. But basically, you need to build the biblical theology, but you can't copy the same thing.
Yeah. Yes, but that model is kind of something we can.
Yes, follow. Yes. But you need to interact with the authors, so that would come the difference from what he has written, because he's not interacted. He's just developed biblical theology. And then putting in your ministry reflection would actually, if you were to even take these authors and bring out some of their, if you have marked in your text significant parts, or if you are able to open the PPT and take some of those quotes and interact with them, you should have enough material to write 10 to 15 pages.
Okay. Yeah.
But you should have developed your philosophy. You should have developed a biblical basic understanding of the philosophy. I can hear your wife and your daughter speaking. No problem. I'm just. So I was just thinking, where is that sound coming from? Then I identified the sound. Yeah. So, introduction. You could write from 1 and 2, and build the continuity. You could write about the idea of establishing. Paul having his desire to establish a church, and the first step he took was towards establishing individual households, and he established it. For him to establish the individual households, he worked on certain codes, household codes, that he and that you need to explain. Then the different, you can take it from Ephesians, Colossians, and Peter, and build that biblical theology from there. You can argue against it also. You have plenty of content to argue against that and for that. So you can write both. You can also present the different views and all of those things. By the time itself, you would have finished 8 to 10 pages in writing. And once you have interacted with the, so once you've written the biblical theology, then you can interact with the authors. Try and interact with all the authors so that you have a good resource interaction. You don't need to go to, there is Stephen B. Clark and plenty of them. There are huge amount of volume of content. We don't need to interact that much. But you should have interacted with all the authors: Robert Banks, Stephen Clark, David Verner, and Vern Poitras. Jeffrey, you can interact at the introduction level itself, because the concept of establishing can be chorizo and all of that. Be brief in the introduction you can give. Any of you started writing? What do you say, Suma?
I said little started writing, but today's that
I think
article,
last week itself we already had some
neck
content.
is paining, Pastor. Today's article, which Pastor Brother Subhash is going to do, he is like, it's so different the way he has explained the whole thing. It is not at all. He has been very critical about what Paul has. My neck is paining today, Pastor. I sat and read the rest of it today. I mean. So,
Super Sister, what do you think here? Verner is going against.
Yeah, he's almost going against. He is bringing so much, I mean, so much of detail, and the detail is, of course, he must have read some history, and that's why he's writing the things that he's writing. It's like the whole thing now looks different from what he has explained and what he's written. But of course, he says he gives reason all throughout. He writes from First Timothy, Titus, and he keeps talking about it. The authors of the pastorals has told this way, that way, but he has really come down upon Paul for the way he's addressed young women and slaves. And of course, he says there's nothing much that young men and women are doing there, but the way he's addressed widows, young widows especially. So very interesting. Now, like, I'm thinking, Harry, is Paul right? Like, what is this?
It's so much in depth, like 60 pages.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't skip anything. It is so much.
I mean, why you have to write? I'm just thinking, where did these authors get so much of time? In that time, they could have gone and made some changes in people's lives. Yeah.
No. So these are scholars. They're scholars.
Exactly, Bast. Understood.
Their job is to sit
Is this exactly?
And you're reading one chapter in a book. You can imagine the size of the book.
I know. But it was like, I was thinking of Brother Subhash only. He said, please pray for me. I have to do this. And I was thinking, ayo.
Thankfully, I read one article last week and one this week. So otherwise, both the articles this week would have been a lot.
No, I skipped the other one. There was too much of the Greek things, So I skipped that house.
Which that house one?
Yeah, okay. Traditions and pastorals. I just started reading. I couldn't. But the Q one, it was interesting. So
yeah, but the second one, Q is really good. Nice.
Okay, Subhash brother, you are set to go. Let us hear your feelings of the article, and then you can take us to the article itself.
And I had to be honest, and admit the fact that I was not able to finish my entire reading.
Okay, no problem.
Through the circumstances I was going through. And so I will present the cream of this entire study. What I learned is, I think rather than going through this article, we should literally read this Bible portions which clearly say exactly what to do. And this article is nothing but a supplementary kind of pills, just to understand the culture, context, and the facts behind the scene, So I think we can
Subhash brother, don't you think that we need to know the background, the context to understand what?
Yes, we need to. But at sometimes we get into total confusion. That's a thing,
No, but that confusion will clear. The confusion will clear. It is, because you're, till now it was settled and you are in a particular place. Now you are, the whole thing will, because you are thinking through it. Because suddenly you see a context. Oh, this is how it was in the Greco-Roman culture. This is how it was in the Jewish culture. We never knew all these things. We were reading it as if it was written to us.
Yes. That I agree, because Paul is addressing each and every situation, what he faced particularly. And for example, I can introduce something like this, see, Paul wanted to establish the churches, which means multiply, influence the community. And as I shared the earlier example for my another missionary I met, a few years ago from here, went to Varanasi in the early 80s, it's incredible. And they gone with 2 of the kids. And later they understood people still are not identifying with them because they thought they are not even married because she's not wearing bindi. And the moment she started wearing bindi, things changed. And they were able to communicate to the people. And they have so many house churches now, so many, in that Varanasi area and that particular area. So that is a stumbling block, I'm pretty sure. When Paul is going through the community, he's hearing the other side, people talking. For example, one of my co-worker in the student ministry, he attended American church, and I see many people criticizing him or that and their family. Hey, their 3 children are not allowed walking in the Lord, and how they can be, and they're taking care of all international students, but as their children is, not walking in the Lord. People see our own Christian people are criticizing. Then think about people in the regular community when things are not, in a place. So that is the real reason I believe Paul was going through each, and as we read this article, we can see Paul is addressing everything, in a family, even in church, all kind of people, husband, wife, parents, and children relationship, master, slave, and even older woman, younger woman, all these relationships have a strong impact for the multiplication of the churches. Because if it is not, impacting the community, it doesn't, fly that much. So that's a reason. And even I have so many friends, you all have, right? You all might have experienced same question. Hey, even I think Dr. Radhakrishnan said, Christians are ordinary. I may not fully agree, but ordinary people making extraordinary claims. So all these things are nothing but our part of witnessing. And as I'm from Kerala, I can see all the time this Jacobite and all, the Orthodox, all the church, unbelievable, like worse than political parties, and the street fights and all the things. And even if, so all these things are affecting our testimony and affecting our witness. And ultimately people may think, hey, Christians are same, we are same. And to be honest, sometimes I feel the other people are much better, in their behavior, because, these are the true facts. So I think Paul is trying to address something to be a cream, and we should all have an order, right? Think about the universe, all the planets are going, and God who ordained in a very special way. None of them made their own route. They all put in that track. That's why we have the entire system is still running. Same thing, our traffic rules and everything. There is a rule, and there is even there is an order in place to have a proper functioning. That way, everybody respect each other and understand that. And that's all cream I understood from this entire study, setting these things in how, order. So can I share the PPT, brother?
Yes, sure, please.
Okay. I have only few sections in PPT. The rest I have to read through it, fortunately.
Suma and Josh also can help because they have just both have finished the entire.
Yeah, if you read, please help me. I need your help.
Sure, Pastor.
So you can see, I believe. Hold on. Let me
On
put in
the
the slideshow.
slideshow.
Can you see?
Yeah, but there's a left panel that is opened also. Something is.
Oh, it looks okay to me.
Oh. I got some panel both sides.
Oh, it is full screen for me, like proper.
It's okay to me too.
Okay.
Okay.
Everybody, for Josh and everybody, it's fine.
Yeah, Pastor. I mean, there are
Yeah,
two circles, but that is part of the presentation. I mean, nothing.
No, not the two circles. I got two left and right. Someone panels that are black in color.
No, Pastor. I think that
no,
is.
Pastor. It's just us.
For me also, it is perfect size.
Okay.
So can I continue, brother?
Yeah, please.
So the article, we all know who it is written, and definitely, so basically it's addressing the household and the household of God in the Church of the Pastorals. And so the church, we all are familiar, the household of God. And the author characterizes the church as the household of God in, 1 Timothy 3:14. And can someone, since I am on the sharing part, I can't see that. Can someone read 1 Timothy 3:14, please?
Yes.
Although I hope to come to you soon, I'm writing you this instruction so that you want me to read the rest? It stops at-
Yeah.
So
Please
that
don't.
if I am delayed, you will know how people ought to conduct themselves in God's household, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and foundation of the truth.
Yeah, I think that's good enough. I think as Pastor George mentioned earlier, the Ephesians, the Paul is talking about the entire revelation of household of and the church and what's the plan of God and all. So it is very critical. We have to conduct things in a manner and worthy of calling. Otherwise, we are projecting God and His kingdom in a in a different way, and it can have negative impact. So Paul is trying to, and so here also the article is based on that, and the way that church members ought to behave, and that's a main idea or main thing which I believe attracted that first generation Christians. Even though they faced persecution, everybody was watching them closely. I think we can see the same replica even in the Old Testament, right? The Israel was called out, even though God can have an easy way to lead them, back to Canaan. He chose a difficult path and difficult route, and all this, it was. We can see when the conversation with Rahab and even others, even the kings, trying to put curse on him. So the entire news is spread. Here is a people of God. If it is in our 21st century, the news readers may be really, hey, we see like 6 lakhs of people going like this. How the way they are in desert, how they are getting food. The God provides the food, and God provides the meat, and all these are great testimony. So same way we are the new Israel, and we are, God even put us hardship in our life to display His glory. So I think so our influence is very critical for the establishment and expansion of the kingdom of God. So that's the same idea here, I think, replicating even the Paul's writing. So 1 Timothy and Titus reflects the influence of the station called schema, which first appears in the Hustafel, which represents a paranetic adaptation of the traditional topos on household management. To be honest, I'm totally new to all these terms.
Okay.
You know,
I'll just explain. Paranetic means with an emphasis to change the audience thinking. Paranesis, that means you're speaking in such a way to make change in their thing. Paranetic adaptation, that means Paul uses the station code schema to help the community to change, to transform.
Ethical instructions is what the
ethical instructions.
instructions.
So basically, it is to change the person who is listening. A paranetic adaptation of the traditional topos on household management. That means traditional topos is the way in which the community was designed in the Greco-Roman world. There was husband, wife, children, and slaves and master. That was the traditional topos of the classical Greco-Roman household, which we don't have today. In some way, we don't have slavery, but we have still people who work at home, but we don't consider them as part of the house. I mean, we don't. That's a way. So it's a little different for us from a cultural perspective, but that kind of because we know now what the cultural context is, it kind of helps us what Paul was trying to say. Paul was not fostering slavery, but Paul was just addressing the issues of that culture. So imagine there are people sitting in the 21st century and criticizing Paul for promoting slavery because they think what Paul wrote was to them. It is not true. Paul wrote to his culture where slavery was a normal part of life, and slaves wanted to stay with their masters because they had food, they had security, they had insurance, everything was covered for them. But their life was completely dedicated to serving that family. They could not go out or do what they wanted. So I read a lot of articles regarding the slavery at that time, and it's very evident that there were good masters and bad masters. Good masters, people never wanted to leave them. In fact, they are freedmen. When they are set free after they have served a period of time, they are set free. Many of them continue to serve. They never left the house. So our understanding of slavery is not the slavery that we have seen in the 1700s and 1800s. That is a different entirely. The idea of slavery was different at that time.
All right. Thank you, brother. So this exam article, what are we trying to examine? So basically the core theme is church is, yes, it is plan of God. We belong to that kingdom. At the same time, church is a social entity. So it's the model of the household is, very important because every structure in this society, to exist, there has to be an order, there has to be a structure, and which is, we all know that. So a consistent attempt being made to distinguish basically 4 categories the author in this article. The author assumes to be true and accepts without question, and certain things the author opposes vigorously. And third thing, the author advances as his own view without explanation or defense. And fourth category, the author advances, explains, and or defends as his own view. So these are the 4 different categories we can see in this article. So the first 3 categories will be used to identify actual conditions in the Church of the Pastorals, while the second and fourth will be used to identify author's particular viewpoint. So when we read through the article, we have to keep that in mind. So second and fourth is particularly his viewpoint, and second and fourth. So as we move on, so I think it's a repetition of a little bit detail. He's stressing on the social structure of the church, and also even Paul, I believe, in his writings definitely and perspective from which the author view social groups and also addresses social tensions in the church, because we all belong to a community and we all have to live, and there is an implications, there is an influence which we all face definitely. So that can even come to church. So, so that needs to be addressed. So that's why the term the household comes into picture. And so the author of the Pastorals never addresses the subject of the household life of church members as a topic in its own right. Rather, whenever he introduces the topic of household life, he does so in the course of discussing one aspect or another of life in the household of God. He's more towards the household of God, how to this article more about how to conduct things in the household of God, which is church. Nevertheless, such a separate treatment is offered here in the belief that it will prove helpful in penetrating the author's conceptualization to discover the social entities. So he's not, at the same time, we have to understand to treat the household as a separate topic is to depart from the way in which the conceptualizes the Christian community. And we always say it's a family of families. So we cannot, exclude family when we discuss the family of families. But this article mostly regarding, mostly concentrate on the household of God. And there is another term called the householder. And so the householder is in the section which qualifications for the office in the church are given. And also, so I mean, it's all based on our, First Timothy and Titus and all these different, Bible portions he is discussing clearly. And some of the places he uses so many, Greek words, which I have no clue. And direct information is available only about householders among the leadership of the church. And basically, three passages he considered: 1 Timothy 3:2 and 1 Timothy 3:8 and Titus 1:6. If you have Bible, you can read that maybe.
Brother, what was in the previous slide? Can you just show me the previous slide?
Actually, he is trying to cover the social realities. I think he done an extensive study in that culture and context, and trying to discover the social realities. That's what I think this article is mostly about.
Mm-hmm. So giving us more from an exegetical perspective, what happened in that context.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand that the author of the Pastorals never addresses the subject of the household life of church members as a topic in its own right.
That is in the article. It says, actually, this is a continuation of a couple of other chapters. That's another thing.
Yeah.
They are talking about chapter 3 and all, which we have no clue.
So whenever he introduces the topic of household life, he does so in the course of discussing one aspect or another of life in the. Brother, why did you pull that down?
No, I just wanted to go to the article.
I think all these 4 statements are from the article only, right? I mean,
Yes. Actually, it's a continuation of chapter 3, and then it's chapter 4. It comes and referring that. So, I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't have my other laptop have no office or anything, so that's the issue I have.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, go ahead.
So basically, it deals with the office of bishop, and first part of the article, how a bishop or how a deacon ought to behave, which is based on all these, 1 Timothy 3:12, Titus 1:6, or 1 Timothy 5:9, and 1 Timothy 3:2.
So this article would be very critical for the interaction, because almost all other articles were primarily with regard to the individual household. Here he is addressing more the corporate household.
Yes. And everywhere you can see a common paradigm here. Even the bishop should be the husband of one wife, and other side it says even demanded that widows be the wife of one husband. So there is same strategies even for men and women is mentioned. So that's next topic. So the meaning of these two similarly structured expression has been widely debated according to the article, and there were 4 different views. The first one, it is possible that the former is directed against the practice of polygyny, while the latter has some other meaning. Basically it's polygamy is I can't see my notes, unfortunately.
Alt tab, brother.
All right.
You don't need to pull down your your notes are written down. Huh?
Yeah. I mean, the first time I'm using that, I thought I'll be able to.
Yeah, if you're using the presentation mode, it will come in a small box separately. But we will also be able to see that anyway, because it is like sharing the screen.
Okay. So basically, the article clearly says there is a, the first view, monogamy was, only recognized form of for the Greek and the Roman society, but the Jewish law allowed polygamy. So in that context, there are both Gentiles and Jews are in the, church. So basically, it's a,
so the
two,
so you have not mentioned the meaning of these two similarly structured expressions. Which are the two expressions?
These two, basically, the husband of one wife, the wife of one husband. Why Paul is stressing this, this is a similar term. We can see repeatedly coming everywhere. So the reason is because there is a monogamy in the current culture where the churches are in the Greek and Greco-Roman culture, right? I mean, but there are Jews, there could be someone still believe in polygamy, I can't even see my cursor. Okay. So that's a situation. So, and then we can, the article clearly says, okay, I think it's, so the second possibility is that both expressions refer to sexual fidelity within a monogamous marriage. That is another view regarding this. The being faithful to, the husband and wife towards each other. And third possibility is that a prohibition of a remarriage after divorce was in view. And the fourth possibility is that to require that church officers and enrolled widows should have been married only once, purely just whether they are widow or whatever it is, they should be married once. So this is all from the article itself, I'm saying it. So the conclusion, this is the conclusion. Nevertheless, the fourth possibility presents the most likely interpretation. It involves a simpler, according to this writer, It involves a simpler explanation of the Greek expression than do the second and third possibilities, and it suits the social and ethical context of urban Hellenistic Christianity far better than the first. Of course, when we represent to that community what they believe, we have to make sure that we can't just drastically go and change, even though there are some Jews believe in that. So I think we can see the establishing factor and how to transition or our gospel in a best effective way to the current culture and current community. So the first possibility appears to be by far the least likely for the same reason, which means it's not regarding the polygamy and I think I will go back to the original view.
So the idea of a monogamous relationship, fidelity within a monogamous relationship was, I think, according to me, from what I have read so far, the reason why Paul addresses many of these concerns. Because even for the Greco-Roman world, though monogamy was a standard, they definitely had multiple relationships. They had courtesans, and they had, the woman was just a property for him to manage his estate, especially his children. Other than that, he had no special consideration for the woman, for his wife. But he had courtesans, he had people, women, other women with he had sexual relationship with for pleasure and things like that. So when these came into the church, whether it is a polygamous relationship in a Hebrew culture or the Jewish culture, or in the Greco-Roman culture where the woman was property and the man had a freedom to have multiple relationships in formats of relationships with a woman. But all of it was property. All of it was property for him. There was this, this Greeks had a thing of going to listen to speeches and intellectual discussions. There was a woman who would accompany the Greek man, the Greco-Roman man, to these meetings. So they had women for every function, actually, many of these Greco-Roman people. So when these people came into the church, Paul had to deal with this kind of cultural ideology that was there and bring them into a monogamous relationship, bring them to commit to each other in a monogamous relationship, and the fidelity, sexual fidelity within a monogamous. So when you say Greco-Roman, there is no, it is monogamous and there is no, I mean, the issue of fidelity was there. There was no commitment to that wife, or no intention or no requirement of the man to show love to his wife or take care of her or anything. She was in charge of his estate. She is to do it like technically like a slave, and to just bring up his children. But she was property. She had no rights. She had nothing. So I think in all this context, the importance of fidelity in a monogamous relationship. So many of these people, as they were taught, they matured and they started to understand the gospel, and Paul wanted to see that they come into a proper, they would take their marriage seriously. The man would start to reciprocate to the woman in terms of loving and caring for her and committing himself completely to her rather than going outside for his sexual appetite.
Thank you, brother. So in conclusion, so if this conclusion is correct, then the author of the pastorals may be seen to be influenced to some extent. I don't know. I didn't understood because he's only we have only this chapter 4, and this is a Verner, and I don't know which author even he's talking about. And many times he's referring chapter 3 and other from the. So I have no clue. He's talking about. This is written in the article itself, which was a little bit confusing to me. And anyway, this is what written in the article itself. I just put it as a conclusion part. if this conclusion is correct, then the author of the pastorals may be seen to be influenced to some extent by the same, or is he talking about the Paul? I don't know. Pastoral may be seen to be influenced to some extent by the same ascetic tendencies which characterizes his opponents. And it may also be seen that he holds husband and wives to be single sexual standard and ethical stance, which reflects the broad movement in his day toward improvement of the wife's position in marriage. So basically, you know, there is definitely an influence from the culture. And his egalitarian approach here represents a striking contrast to the last time you discussed that very well, those three, views. Striking contrast to the position he usually takes on husband-wife relationships, as will become increasingly clear below. Furthermore, as he's discussing further, in the article. Furthermore, since he presents I try to copy it in a proper way, but this Greek word come properly in the slide, it looks like.
Yeah.
So I just, put it like that. So in the list of qualification without special explanation or defense, it is highly probable that he expects his audience both to be familiar with the terminology and for the most part, at least to agree with his position. Thus, it is most likely that he is reflecting the generally, although not universally accepted view in his church. So these are all the conclusions regarding the article. He's probably, projecting his own church view. So it's all kind of not sure anything. Anyway, the perspectives for the householders.
Okay, here is the name of the book if you want to look at a book to find the rest of the Household of God, the Social World of the Pastoral Epistles. That is a Society of Biblical Literature dissertation by David C. Verner, 1983. That's there in the book actually. If you want to go and check. I know that this article itself is too much for you. Then
Yeah,
you don't
too
go
much.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay. So how the bishop governs his household and how successfully he does so. And this is regarding the elders and, which we all are familiar with the passages. So the first thing is how he governs his children. And he must keep in subjection and also, the bishop or mostly talking about men, a responsibility to see that their behavior, the children's behavior properly reflects their station in the household. And also the bishop who has to govern his household well. And this is basically talking about bishops and mostly addressing the children and also husband and wife relationship, this section. Maintaining the dignity appropriate to his own position. So very, it's enforcing that he must govern his household, including his children and his wife and their family very well. So that then only we can, it's very true, right? I mean, I have seen many people and, even in I don't know why, even in the ministry, somehow, even I face to a certain extent when we are in the forefront, probably due to the business, or sometimes it could be enemy, trying to plant the seed, and our children it's a battle. It's a battle. Even I go through a little bit. I have 2 teens. So, it is a difficult battle, which we all have to battle with, I believe. Then the same thing is mentioned for the deacons. He should be, taking care the same way. And deacons' wives accountable for the behavior. Deacons are accountable for the behavior of their wives, because I think it's mostly talking about men. And just as a bishop is made accountable for his children as well. So it's all talking about, the family relationship and how we should be, managing or governing very well. And that is important for, the leadership role. And another thing is, it says the supreme authority of the household in the affairs of the household without stopping to argue for this view. So, this is even, I think most of our churches also consider, I believe, when somebody is, taken for leadership, this is one of the things we also, I think, look into. So I don't think we need further explanation in this. And then women in the household, there's the next topic it is discussed. It is referring Titus 2:4 and 5, 1 Timothy 5:14, 1 Timothy 5:10, 2 Timothy 1:5. All these passages are being, referred. And so basically it's a, how there is a different view, as Dr. George mentioned, in their culture, woman, I think it's still, many people look at woman as a, property, or, in a different way. So I'm pretty sure the same, even I'm here in US, I see all different mindset. So same thing definitely was there, the Greco-Roman culture and the Jewish background, and modesty is also important to a certain extent. And all these things definitely should have, made Paul to write all these relationships, how to conduct, and even how to behave when they come to the church. So here, the younger woman also, one of the Greek values mentioned and involves, mostly it is talking about self-control and self-discipline to conduct one's life within the established order in the way to appropriate to one's place within that order, which means there can be, disorder, there can be, people misbehave. And then if there is no order, no respect, how can we display our, witness? What people, when somebody come to church and they may not come back again, and even I think I mentioned I have to, that's the only reason I have to move out of my mother church. I tried my level best and things were going in chaos. So nobody was there to control, nobody was there to listen. Everybody seems like they are the masters, they are, so then it's a chaos. Then it's so definitely as a, church planner, as an apostle, Paul has to address all these issues. And so that's, I think, core cream of this. These are all from the article, I put it there. Even the, a loving wife and as a mother, and everything is mentioned. How to respect, how to, yes, that is not that one person is higher than above us. We discuss the oneness, but at the same time, we all work in an organization, we all work in this, in this society, and none of us go and, do against our boss, always we are subject to that. The same thing, I think Paul is trying to envision and making them to understand. I'm pretty sure that's why even the Corinthians, Paul is talking, writing to women to be silent, there should be, scenarios like that. It is going beyond the control. So ultimately, Paul is forced to write, not just to mean that to every woman has to be silent. What he's trying to say, specifically in that context, he has to fix the issue. Otherwise, they keep on doing the same. It is going to derail the plan of God. So I think that's what it is all about, in my understanding. And you can read, as I said, it's a big article, so much thing to process. And as I think Pastor Joshua said, every line is important, to be honest. So that was my challenge. What should I put in the, what should I ignore? What can I, come up with even the PPT? So, and the same thing we can see. So basically, he is addressing all the things involved in that current community. Now, children and slaves, he is addressing in the next section. Children, the household of God, children are given no duties in the pastorals. They are important only as the object of discipline and nature, as noted above. When they reach adulthood, they have the responsibility of caring for their parents and or grandparents. So basically, that is a culture, right? I mean, we all do take care of, as children, we have to take care of our parents, even if we have grandparents. So if we don't do that, then our testimony is lost. No matter how many mission work we do, how much we tirelessly work, it doesn't do well, And so same thing with the master slaves. And once this is the community now, everybody is coming together, even the master and slaves come together and worship together and share the meal. But that doesn't mean that they have to disrespect them, while they do the work. Or so that's things I think even the master-slave relationship also, of Titus 2:9 and 1 Timothy 6:1, talking about putting some station cords. So basically mutual respect, and understand that we all equally made in the image of God. So of course, when we know that both are in equal position, so at the same time we have different roles to play to execute certain things that is necessary. And so be subject in everything, that's what it is talking about. So these slaves are, it says there is some scenarios probably occurred, they are disrespecting their masters, because now they belong to a community, and that can happen. I can totally understand that. And I think the core, I didn't prepare the entire slide, so I have to go with my notes. My sincere apology. I had a 7-step interview process, which I was going through for a week. So many things, 7 steps. So I was totally into that. My apology for that. So all I wanted to say, I can share more than this article. I can share, I think, my own personal experience. I think, the cream of the thing is the gospel. I can say my own father, he was a police officer. He was a very alcoholic, and all kind of things. He did all the nasty things, to be honest. And I remember there are times when he comes, when he is drunk, my mother made the food and he can easily throw that plate, if he doesn't like. And, but I see the drastic change in my own father's life. Moment he received Christ, he never gone for any therapy or any counseling to stop his alcohol. He used to easily finish 2 packets of cigarette a day. Everything stopped. And people said he may get a heart attack because he stopped everything all of a sudden. Not only that, he born in a city He has no clue. He never helped anybody. He only just, enjoyed his life. Of course, my mother was sick, she was a cancer patient. That's the whole thing led to her, all our family got saved through that. And so I saw my father, until his death. He passed away last May 27th. He don't know cooking. He had absolutely no clue about cooking. Cooking I did most of the part, and with my grandmother, and even he did all other work, cleaning the house, even outside, Kerala, those from Kerala, muttu adikka ennu parnaa, that is purely a shameful job for a man to do. But we are four brothers, okay, we are four boys. We all took the turns. We all did that, we all cleaned our house. We all bought, because when the gospel come, there is a change, happens automatically. And so what I'm trying to say is the same change has to happen, but we all are sinful. There is carnality within all of us. There can be pride within all of us. So then we may not be fully subject that Holy Spirit or the Word of God. So that's the reason I think all these writings has to be, made to ensure that, hey, listen, guys, we are called out and we are going through persecution still. We have another sermon by R.C. Sproul. All I know is the church is the only place everybody is sinners come together, and it's a sinners fellowship, actually. I like that statement. So all other place you need to be qualified for something, and so of course that's a thing. And so this entire article we can see Paul is addressing all these issues based on the different categories. Then it goes on. Well, Pastor Josh and Suma sister, if you fully read, you can help. You can always talk to your points. And I just wanted to go through my notes. So master and the slaves, there are so many things mentioned in that. I know I can't finish everything in this session, but as said, basically master and slaves mutually respect and display that God's godliness in that. That's all point of this. It's mentioning in this article, and then it goes on to. There is a summary of assessment mentioned in that after that section. It says, the idea of domestic life that reflects the prevailing view in his church. That's all point of this, as how we display ourselves as a church, as a community of God to the outside world. So there is a domestic situation, and as we mentioned earlier, the cultural perspectives people understand, and what husband ought to do, what a wife ought to do. Although Paul is trying to change that, as for example, we can see in Ephesians, definitely Paul is talking about husbands, how to conduct as how you behave like Christ. I mean, that nail all things out. When anybody, those who love like Christ and work like Christ, that nail it down, then there is no question, everything will fall into place. So same thing, he's talking about young woman and, older woman, because we see, and then widows, he's talking about that, how some people are going and talking unnecessary gossips and all, creating issues. So all these things, this article is again talking about that and addressing. And then the leadership of the church the officers and official structure, and it in how the the official structure like bishop, elder, deacon, all this has to be in place because we live in the world, and we have to have a model. Otherwise, if we are not structured, we are not organized, we don't work effectively. That's what I think the Paul is trying to put in order, and that is core for the establishment too, right? So then he goes on to talk about general features of the leadership. That is on page 151, if you are in the article. So there is, they don't offer a clear picture of the official ecclesiastical structure, but it's saying showing considerable amount of information about the leadership of the churches addressed, and which we can see in the passages for the bishop in 1 Timothy chapter 3, and it's always say be faithful to the calling. And also it says how someone if take office of the bishop, how he need to behave and how he need to take care of the household of God. So all these are from the passages particularly mentioned in this article. And then it goes on to the qualifications, which I think we already mentioned. It's already talking about that. Hold on. Again, my sincere apology. I thought I will be able to finish it.
No problem, brother. No issues. Suma sister, Josh, what do you think? Is there anything that you can tell us? I have something to share, so that
I think one thing that he talks about a lot, especially in the second half, is the about widows, and about widows, being an office, so widows had to qualify in some ways to receive help from the church. Okay, so of course, part of those requirements were they would have had to serve well in the past, and then he touches a bit about there's the responsibility of the family, the parents or the children or the grandchildren to actually take care. But the widows part, he kind of talks a lot. He talks about even young widows, and
his arguments are very interesting there.
Yeah.
So
he says
that he says that if you're a young widow, he basically wanted them to be married than not be married and be part of the office because they were young, and he somehow felt that they are a hindrance there. And therefore,
I think, sister, I think he is mostly mentioning that there is a chance that otherwise they will be gone into sexual temptation. Correct. And
correct.
So there is a great part of sinning. So
exactly,
yeah,
that's what he and therefore he tells them that you have to either abstain to get into these offices, or you might as well get married. That's how he puts it. And I think from the what the author writes here is like basically he didn't want them to be part of the office and all that, especially if they were young.
Yeah, and he tells it has been a huge kind of burden for the leadership in the church, so that is why he has mentioned it, in two different letters. So.
Also the slaves, where when the Christian slaves they become believers and they come in, then there was an issue because then the owner is calling, they become brothers, and so there was an issue of where the way these slaves started behaving with them. So he had to very carefully address this because these slaves are going outside and being a bad witness. like what Brother Subhash was saying, basically he wanted them to be good witnesses when you go outside and you're representing the church. That was another thing that he mentions. And of course about being taking care of the house and all that for the women. That is a better thing to do, taking care of the children. Yeah, the author brings in a lot of history and he tries to tell us why Paul would have written. And
yeah, I think to summarize, he kind of, he uses a full household code. So I think, yeah, he starts with husband and wife, and then he talks about, the emancipation and liberation of women. It's not just happening today, but something that happened, even in the 1st and 2nd century. So from Paul's perspective, it seems that, that was happening quite frequently. And, this was being probably led by the young widows.
yeah.
And that passage from Timothy where, he says that false teachers make their way into, women's home and kind of trap them. So he says these probably young widows, because they were busybodies, they were easily kind of led into false teachings. And he tries to connect everything, saying, these women were probably also influential and had a lot of money. So they were able to kind of teach in the church, just because of their position in society. And so that's why Paul is, specifically saying, I do not permit a woman to teach, and things like that. So
also the false teachers, Josh, what you said, like I always thought false teacher was somebody from outside. But here he also mentions they must have been the people in the subordinate, not the heads and the people who were holding office, who had a little bit of a issue with what is happening in church, wanted to create issues. So the false teachers are also these people who are not given the positions. And of course, he talks that the positions are always given to people who are affluent, people who are there helping. That also is he throws into this.
Yeah, and he also says like people who had slaves are, it's talking about, treating their slaves well. So by default, it's understood that, they should have been, well off enough to have slaves. So that I think was the first part of the houseful code. Then I think when it comes to, I think slaves and masters. So he says again, the one passage I think talks a lot about, about the slaves, reciprocating and honoring their masters. But then in the second passage, it talks only about slaves to masters and not masters to slaves. So he's saying that, the liberation of slaves was probably not a really big thing. So that's why Paul doesn't stress so much on that. So he says the focus is more on, the other end, how the masters are supposed to behave. Then I think the third one, husbands or other men and children. So again, he's saying there's no responsibility per se of the children that way. So I think again, he talks about men and women in worship, so he, and, so the men, so he says men everywhere. So he tells that probably is an indicator that, in Ephesus, probably there were multiple gatherings even within the same city. So he's saying everywhere, meaning, it kind of applies to all the places, and women dressing, appropriately. And I think those two words, he kind of propriety and position or something, those two words he keeps coming back to time and again. So so I think he kind of, in the last one, as you were telling, sister, he kind of is a little bit critical. I mean, he says, the social structure of the church is quite rigid, and that's why women were trying to get liberated, and emancipation of women and things like that. So Paul is frustrated with that, and that's why he's trying to
prosperity and proprietary is the words he mentions.
Correct. Yeah, prosperity and propriety.
Also, he's talking about wealth and wealthy, in page 174, how to, stay out of the greed and don't use as a as a teacher or motivator to desire to see reap profit from religion. Those things are also mentioned.
Okay.
And
Can I?
then, go on.
Sure, please.
And also talking about false teachings as well, Yeah, I think Suma's sister mentioned that already.
Anything one word, as you were saying in the beginning of your article, I think social tensions, that word he keeps using again and again. Yeah, but then he says there's also a reward. So he says, although there is this hospital code and, there is the man who is, at the top and, everything is that kind of, owner property relationship. But he says still there is a opportunity, even where there is subordination and where, there is a chance for, women when they become, elder women to kind of train the younger women. So that is also kind of a highlighted role. And then younger men can aspire to become, elders and leaders, if they keep their work and keep their testimony. And also he says slaves and younger women also have a role to play by not, kind of bringing the name of Christ to disrepute. So he's saying, although it is the man who is at the top at subordination at all levels, but still even the subordinates have an opportunity to, to kind of come up from where they are. Okay, and I think the word he keeps using, householder, so probably refers to the man, who is kind of the owner. So
he also talks about leadership, that there were fights, or there was a kind of a discord between the younger people who were aspiring to be leaders, because the people who are in leadership were the ones who normally selected or elected. So he goes on to say that there were issues even there, social tensions, additional evidence of social tensions involving men with thwarted leadership ambitions. So even in that leadership, he mentions that. Another thing that I found is, in one of the part, he says, thus, in the church of pastorals, one is normally rewarded socially for being male, prosperous, respectable, and a competent household manager, he says. So he's very critical, the way he puts forth what Paul has written or what he analyzes in some places.
So the issue, how we need to view this is the article is given to us for relevance. Our foundation is the biblical theology, but the articles give us a better picture to look at the text and say, hey, what did the original author say to the original audience? Who was the original audience? What was the context of the original author and the original audience? That has always to be there, because when you are reading, just see this, if you go to your mother deed and you work there, it says, if you suppose you are in, it says unit 3, issue 1 is Paul's job description. Then it says biblical passages. Just below that, when reading the passages, take note to do two very important tasks. One, read the passage with the intent of determining the author's intended meaning, and to study the passage as it relates to the issues and the questions proposed. So it is important for us to understand what was the context. Why did the author write like that? Who was he writing to? What was the situations they were placed in? And for us to take one verse and just move on that, make a doctrine, may not make sense, which is what many of the theologians have done today. But to look at the larger framework of what God was doing through the gospel into the life of the people, and how it affected social structures at that time. So that's important. That's a key for us to work around with. One second, I just lost my DigiPen. Where did it go? I just wanted to put something on the. Correct. Yeah. So let's look at this. This is the Greco-Roman world. This is the Jewish world. This is the church. So this would comprise the entire humanity at that time. Am I correct?
Yeah.
That would be the Gentile, the Jew, and the believers or followers of Jesus. There's nothing outside this. Apart from this, there have to be aliens, basically. So the Greco-Roman culture or the world had station code scheme. Station code scheme. That means husband, wife, father, child, master, slave, and this all were the man. And here there were this part of the station always had the wife, the child, and the slave. So this was the culture at that time. I mean, that's what we need to see, the station code schema. It was the Greco-Roman culture. In the Jewish world, now you must remember, this Jewish world is not the ideal Jewish world that the God of Israel intended them to have. This is not it. This is the post-exilic, corrupted, completely corrupted. They were messed up, they were mixed, and now they're on their return journey. Ezra brought a revival by reading the books, but they keep falling back. They're falling back oppressed. And the whole Pharisaical system, if I notice that this Pharisaical system was not there. It came after the return of the Jews back to Israel. There are some religious systems came, Sadducees, okay, Essenes, Zealots. You have seen all of this in the scriptures, actually, these words. They were all having emphasis. Now, they didn't believe in Pharisees believed in resurrection. Sadducees did not believe. I think the other way around. I'm not sure. Essenes had their own understanding. Zealots were aggressive, that they wanted to restore Israel to its thing by force. So they had their own religious system, where for a Pharisee at that time, when he got up, he prayed, "Thank God I'm not a Gentile, a slave, or a woman." So you can understand what was the status of the culture at that time. Again, it was corrupt. It was a corrupt system. It was a mixed. God told them, don't mix with this people, the nation of the land of Canaan. They went and married. They brought in their gods. They started killing their own children, sacrificing. God told them, leave the seventh year, don't plow the land. One of the reasons they went into exile is that God actually states it. You plowed on the seventh year. You did not keep my Sabbath holy. You should see the way God gets angry when all of these was done for their benefit. They were actually destroying community. They were destroying, eliminating, or imploding, I would say. So if you see, when woman here was treated with despise, slave was treated with supplies, Gentile was, you can see the spirit at that time. Now, what happened is, this man and woman, this child and this slave came to church. They got saved. So the Greek man, the Greek woman, and the Greek child came to church. Okay, and the Greek slave. Now this man was father. He had worked the role of a father, master, and husband. all three roles he was playing. So wife, slave, child. Then from here, they came, the Greco-Roman, the Jewish man and woman came, and child came into the church. Can you see the kind of mix that was there? Their belief systems, this is completely based on Roman religion, which was nothing but Diana, Artemis, and name it, you name it, sun god, moon god, every god was there. Here was Yahweh, but nothing, it was a very, very corrupt form was there, corrupt form. So, but they came in because they all heard the gospel. Now, Paul, can you imagine when you're in a synagogue, it was easy. It was only Jewish people. Then there were God-fearers. They came and followed the Jewish, listened to the God of Yahweh. But that the God-fearers were one of Paul's easy targets for the gospel. Okay. Now they came into the church. Paul had to deal with a multi-cultural, multi-linguistic, multi-ethnic situation. Can you see the number of multi-ethnic there? In one church. And they all sat on a table, the Jew, the Gentile, the man, the woman, the master, the slave, all sat on the same thing and had the bread and the cup.
First a J instead of G.
What is that?
Jew, that one.
The Gentile and Jew, no, Pastor. So Jew is J.
Sorry. Thank you. Gentile. So in the church, all of these came together. Can you imagine the chaos that was there? Now, when you look at that context, and now you look at the text, you can see the issues. Now the woman suddenly felt liberated because the gospel will liberate. And she took upon the idea of, I am equal, co-heir with the man. And she started to come out, and she was uneducated. She was not, there were a lot of women, majority of the women were uneducated at that time. And they started to get influenced by theology, ideologies coming from everywhere, creating confusion. Some of them were rebelling openly against the elders at that time. Some of the richer women in whose houses, because the richer women, many of them came to the Lord. If you notice, even in the Acts text itself, you can see towards the latter half, it constantly, Luke mentions many rich women in the city came to the Lord. They started to host the house churches. They started to be teachers in the community. Not that their teaching was wrong or anything, but some of them had issues of wrong teaching propagated easily because many of them were not educated. They were business owners. They would probably had good incomes, or they had wealthy husbands, so they were wealthy by nature, but they may not have the knowledge to teach the issues that concerned there. So in a setting of multicultural, multilinguistic, multi-ethnic situation with different stations clearly there, then you have the children there. So you have the Greco-Roman child and you have a Jewish child. Okay, so into this, Paul had to deal with different issues that came up. And this mix of the Greco-Roman Jewish varied as they moved away from Jerusalem. More and more it became Gentile, or what you call as the Greco-Roman people. So naturally the culture will influence the faith, right? Practices of the faith. So he had to put in place certain things. So some of the practical issues, we have to look at it, knowing that this was the context with which Paul had to write some of these practical things in his church. in the churches that he had planted, in the culture that he was dealing with. But we can look at the principles and draw it to our current context. We can't bring that same form and pattern into our context. Our culture is different. But we can take wonderful principles from the idea. For example, the principle of order. Okay. And being a patriarchal culture, being a male-dominated culture, Paul did not want to change that. Paul continued with the idea of a male led community, because the Greco-Roman community was a male-led community. The Jewish community was a male-led community. Now, that was easy for Paul, right? Keep the community led by men. It was easy for him. And it did not affect the penetration of the gospel. It did not affect the work of the gospel. In fact, for the gospel to penetrate the culture, if it overturned the cultural norms, then they would have called it as heresy and chucked it out, right? So Paul was very sensitive to culture and continued to allow the men to lead, at the same time helping the women to have dignity and placing them in a place where the men would take cognizance of them. The men would also serve them in their leadership. The women would be taken care of. That was the idea. So Paul was being watched. Paul was being watched what he was doing. Was he creating a social upheaval? Was he trying to destroy the Greco-Roman world? You know, to such an extent, what Paul would have taught, the gospel could have thrown the emperor itself out. So Paul was very strategic. Paul knew that if he were to preach the gospel of liberty and freedom and released everybody from all of these nonsense that was going on in this thing, the gospel would not go anywhere. So Paul kept the social, cultural settings in place within the church also. But at the same time, I mean, a master who was sitting on the table was also a master when he was outside, and he had to function in the slave. I had posted one document. I hope, maybe, I don't know if you were all able to read Going to the Church in the First Century by Robert Banks. Okay, it's a brilliant one. Light reading, very interesting. It's from the view of an unbeliever coming to the church, house church of Aquila and Priscilla. It's so beautiful to read that. I hope you all got the document, right? I had sent it to you all. So it's a very simple reading. It is like just like an eyewitness report. Hey, this is what I saw. I can't believe it. So he actually comes into the house, and then he sees this man comes and with his slave. Okay. And so he's expecting now the slave to take care of the man, but the man is taking care of the slave in the house. And he's like blown away. He's like, what? What is going on here? And and he's expecting the slave to sit somewhere else. But when the meal starts, the slave also comes and sits on the stick. And all the women are sitting on the chair with the stick. All the Gentile and the Jew is sitting together. For him, it's like chaos. He's like, what is going on here? You know. So he's blown away by this idea and probably that was one of the reasons the church had a powerful, spontaneous expansion, because on the table, on the meal, everybody was equal and everybody was same. That was the way the gospel equalized, that without changing the social structure, So Paul had to instruct the husband, the wife, the children, and the father, and the male, and the master and the slave, how they need to operate now that the gospel has changed their views. How will they relate to their social structure? Because the world had to see this, the church, the world had to see their life and look at it and say, hey, wow, this slave now so willfully serves his master, because for him, he has an motivation now, I do it unto the Lord. So Paul did not tell the slave, you cannot be a slave any further. Paul said, you continue to be a slave, continue to do what you're doing, but what you do excellently as you did unto the Lord. He gives a motivation to do it. Then he brings the master into question and he says, you know, hey, till now you did not have any concern for your slave. You need to take care of them because they are also your co-heirs. So can you see the way he is bringing this social milieu of cultures and language and ethnicity and all, and have to deal with all of them where they are all sitting and having a meal, and how they are going to be led, how they are going to align with the culture such that it can penetrate the culture and affect the culture. Did I make sense?
Yes, Pastor. Yes, I listened to the earlier recording. Many of our sisters were talking about, especially the mother-in-law. When husband help, and how much husband help and all. I am really appreciate my mother. And to be honest, you can ask Pretty. When my parents came here after Joshua was born, I was told Pretty, you know what? Usually I am the one who make tea for her in the morning and help her. And I was maybe, I don't know how my parents will, take it. So I said maybe first few days you should, just do tea and all, And but we were sitting and talking, and my mom, then I said, make tea, and why don't you make it, and my mother only said, and same with all our four brothers, I mean, all my three other brothers, they do help, and my mother, never, even though we are four boys, like never brought us in a way. I think it's all part of the, changing the culture through the gospel and the influence. Otherwise, I don't think that should ever happen. And same with, taking care of kids. We didn't have any babysitter or any maid until this far. And so I had to get up 3 to 4 times every day in a night. Pretty was working night shift, then go to the work in the morning. It was tiring, and especially in the afternoon, I felt sleepy many days. But so all these things, I think, as Dr. George was mentioning, everybody is brought together with the gospel, but it depends on the individual personality, how much they adapt to it, how much they allow the Holy Spirit to work in them, and how much they are willing to change. So it's all makes sense. Ultimately, we all been into the church, seen the real case scenarios. People are different in maturity level. So these things definitely need to be, I think Paul is setting a guideline, because I'm pretty sure everybody respect Paul. Everybody, if Paul says something, that is kind of final word. And I'm pretty sure even the local pastors might have faced that challenge, because when they try, probably they may not, respect that much. Even the master and slave, when they take care, there should be all these conflict which mentioned. So once Paul set a guideline, I'm pretty sure, and when it's read to the church, all over, all the local churches, so now they have a clear idea, okay, this is what it is. And I think that definitely helped the progression of the gospel as well as establishing the church.
So now what is our takeaway in this? Many of us have multicultural, multilinguistic, multi-ethnic churches. I oversee some of those churches like that. And I have a classical, staunch Telugu guy coming, who's a genuine lover of Jesus, but stuck in the Hebron traditions and the extremely legalistic paradigms. And then I have a guy who comes, who studied, abroad, NRI guy comes in, he's been in India, getting very liberal, very culturally free, Western influenced. And I have Telugu, Malayali, Tamil, Kannada, Hindi, all of these languages in some of my churches. Now I have a lot of issues I struggle with, because they're all worshiping together. They all have their stresses in their culture on certain issues. For example, the Telugu people do not believe that they should wear the chappals into the church hall. It's very difficult for us. You understand so if we in our current context have challenges because of these communities coming together to become one big community, the church community, Paul had to address the way they practice their individual families in that culture, and how the gospel should now change their individual family dynamics without changing the order. Because if you change the order, then immediately it would put up a red flag. We didn't change the order, but the dynamics he changed, how they function, how a father and daughter, children should work, how the husband and wife should work, and then of course the economic aspect of the slave master function also. How? Because it was an integral part of our individual household. They all started to come to church. How do they interact in the church now? That also had to be instructed. Now, from this common general body of people, you had to choose elders. Okay. Now, they say that in churches where there was Jewish majority, they called elders. The churches in which there was Gentile majority, they called bishops. And none of these ideas are unique to Christianity. Elders was a Jewish concept of the synagogue. Bishop was a Roman military or societal statement, word that was used. None of these are original for Paul. Paul was working with society and community with only one aspect, that is a gospel that was unique to the message that Paul had, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, that Christ paid a price. You are not your own. Now you are given to Christ. Now no longer I live, but Christ lives in me. All of those concepts of the gospel starting to work into the lives of the people. So things have to be looked in context, where Paul was not trying to upset the order, but change the dynamics within the individual relationship within the family, and then eventually those affecting the corporate family, that is the church, and how the leaderships, how they function, everything relates to the idea of family. So dealing with the negatives of the culture without drastically changing the tenets or order. Dynamics. Now imagine Timothy was pastoring an efficient church, which had a good number of Gentile community, but there was also a good Jewish synagogue and this thing there. So there were probably a 50-50% or maybe 60-40. He would have tough time, He would have tough time writing to these people. Rome had a good Jewish population. So when he wrote to Rome, he had to address a lot of Jewish issues. He had to address a lot of Gentile issues. You can see that the way Paul had to work with all these communities, sub-communities within the general community. So when you read the text, you are able to keep these things in mind, we would see the picture more clearly, rather than taking a statement or a sentence and drawing a theology from that and then hammering people with that theology. We can all work with culture. That's very important. We need to do theology in the context of culture. We need to do theology in the context of our church. That means to say we need to see what the original author told the audience and what was their culture, what was their context, and what was the principle that Paul used. Makes sense. Okay. So I need to pull that principle down of how it is. I can see very clearly in the marriage what principle he was trying to pull in. I can see very clearly in the parental relationship what he was trying to pull in. Why does he not address? He tells a father to instruct the child. That means only father is supposed to instruct the child. No, the issue was the child. The mother was already instructing the child. She was the one who was bringing up the child. The father did not bother about the welfare of the child. So Paul brings the father into accountability to the child. But I know theologians now who teach that woman has nothing to do with teaching the child. It is responsibility of the father. How can that be? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. That's not what Paul is trying to say. That we know the issue was the Greco-Roman man did not address the child at all. Did not at all. It's just a property for it. And to take his legacy on. Paul is calling the Greco-Roman father to say, hey, You have to, now that you are a believer of Jesus Christ, now you are a follower of Christ, you are part of this community, you're part of this family, you have to follow the principles of this community, of the gospel, by which you are now responsible to this child, in the care of this child, and you need to get involved in the instruction of the child in the ways of the Lord. Can you see the idea that how it comes? It's not that Paul is giving exclusively the man the responsibility for that. That's not the case. It was that the man was not involved, and Paul is directing the. So he's not changing the orders. He's not changing the order. He's not telling them. He's not pulling the man down. He's making the man who stands in leadership of the Greco-Roman family to take responsibility for his child. Doesn't upset the order. Changes the dynamic. I'm just trying to give examples of what Paul was trying to do. Can I have other interactions only? I think Subhash, Suma, and Joshua are talking. Where are the other amazing people?
Hi, Pastor. I'm here only.
What do you all think? Does this make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I like the table illustration where the Gentile, the Jew, the Greco-Roman, I mean, all those men, women, everyone, they sit together and they dine, and all the barriers are broken. Yeah.
So it's interesting. These barriers don't come easy down. Paul has to continuously exhort them with the gospel, and through the gospel build. I say gospel enhancements. He would develop the gospel to give more details of what, through the work of Jesus Christ, what happened, and then the implications of, or the application in their specific life within their culture.
Yeah. Pastor, one thing. So are you saying that, let's take this example of this Telugu guy wanting the chapel to be outside the church. So are you saying that first you will not directly address that, I mean, the exterior thing head on, but rather you will try to work with the dynamics in the sense that you will try to give instructions how to behave in the household, and how to behave in the household of God, how to behave in his own family, and then from there you will bring out, I mean, you will try to change or something. Is it like that?
So where did he get the culture of removing chapel into the? Can you tell me where that came from?
No idea.
From his house, right? From his house.
Yeah.
One is from his
Okay.
house. But
No, I mean,
more than
It's
his house. More than his house.
Old Testament.
I think the culture, our culture,
It's a
right? I mean,
culture.
our
When we
culture.
were in Bombay, we used to always remove the slippers out when we went to our friends' houses, because in Maharashtra, Maharashtrians always do that. So we used to always leave our slippers outside the house.
No, we Christianized it, I think.
No, does a Hindu wear his chapel into the temple?
No.
He doesn't. And he shows reverence. The idea is reverence, isn't it?
Yeah, reverence, and also the
nowadays
neatness, right?
Yeah, like
neatness
they
too.
go on pilgrimages, they walk on hot tar road also without chapel.
No, the idea is a lot of these things have come from cultural perspective and understanding of spirituality and things like that, which are not wrong. So we don't want to change that order.
But Pastor, it's more, isn't, we are not against it, but I think when they ask for the biblical reference, it's more Christianized in one way.
Yeah, they will take the burning bush. God told Moses, remove your thing, this is holy ground. Can you argue with that statement? We can definitely argue saying that, hey, we don't have any instruction like that in the New Testament, but that's not correct. I don't have a problem with him. I need to sensitize him and my church towards the idea that we are multi-ethnic, multicultural, and we need to accept each other. That's what Paul was trying to do. That was what Paul trying to do. So I would have the person who thinks that being spiritual is to not to wear his chappal into the church, respect the one who wears the chappal, because, and the one who is wearing the chappal to respect the other person's view, because we have to consider the other one better than ourselves.
Yes, I have a practical scenario, right now, that right now we have some Nigerians and one Caucasian coming to our house church, right? So all our Indians, I mean, of course, it's our house, it's normal practice. We always put our shoes, on the side when we enter. So these two, and, I mean, especially one Nigerian student, he come with his shoes and he sit there. And my daughter said, Daddy, you have to ask him to remove. I said, no, he will do it. Once he literally watch few more weeks, he'll understand, okay, he'll notice men are men, like, many men may not pay attention to so many details, right? So other girl, she removed her shoes, so she is also Nigerian. So they will do it by themselves, I think we should not enforce something like that. That is where we are wrong.
So Paul had to address many of those issues. Many topics are there. Food offered to idols, head covering, you name it. So many peripheral external issues that Paul had to address, because all of this came into with the people came the culture, right? Can you tell the people, if you're coming to this, just leave your culture and come into this? Now we say, no, we have a gospel culture. Now, what is this gospel culture you're talking about? The gospel culture is basically, the idea is that if you, based on certain principles that Christ and his apostles taught, which has to be applied, whereby which the dynamic of the culture is changed to glorify Christ and to love God and love one another. That's what the gospel does, but it doesn't have to change tenets within the culture at that point. It doesn't have to change order. It can change the dynamic of that culture.
I think these all follow or they come in under the purview of gray areas, not completely one side, and that is where we have to use love and wisdom and
Yes.
see how do we manage such situations. What is wrong is purely wrong according to the gospel, and what is right is purely right. Question is, how do we handle the gray areas? And that becomes challenging.
So I always say, true spirituality is tested, or true faith is tested in the gray, not in the black and white. So many people say that you have to Jesus, if you follow Jesus, everything has to be black and white. It doesn't work like that. When you have a multi-ethnic, multilinguistic, multicultural church, you can't put black and white.
Also, when you have teens at home, you cannot put it as black and white.
You have to negotiate the gray. We have to negotiate the gray. We have to negotiate it. So Paul was working with the dynamics of this new community that was multi-ethnic, multilinguistic, multicultural. Without changing the order, he was helping in bringing in the gospel dynamic into this existing order that was there. Now, a Greco-Roman bishop, the term from where Paul adopted it, was a male figure, never a female figure. Am I correct? In the Greco-Roman context, not in the church context, from where Paul adopts this term actually. Bishop is not, bishop, the word is episkopos, right? And the presbytero is elders. So the episkopos is, let me just verify that 1 second. So, though the terminology is taken from the culture that is around, the people who stood in that position, episkopos, yes, overseer, bishop is the word that is there. In the Greco-Roman world, there were men. So Paul is not going to change the order within the church, because the person who is going to lead that community has to be a man, because the culture is already dictating it. If Paul's gospel was bent upon changing that order, the gospel would have never penetrated. They would have shut the gospel out on the spot. So does that make sense in terms of how Paul operated the gospel within this new community?
Yes, Pastor, makes sense.
Now
Yeah, it is very critical for to influence and work in that community. When I engage with the mostly non-believer students, and I always quote their scripture, Quran and all, when and start with that always into conversation. If we try it purely with, in olden days I used to do that, but now no longer anymore. Because we have to have a common ground, we have to have at least respect each other, and then only we can communicate. Otherwise, we are shutting the communication right there.
That what you're saying, brother, is from an evangelistic perspective.
Yeah.
This is within the community, within already believers who have come together. So Paul used that what you're talking is about the Athens model, where he presented based on your own poet and things like that. That's wonderful. But within the community of believers who now have believed and put their trust in Jesus Christ, who commune together at the table, who are working together, but they come with different stresses from their culture.
Yes,
fortunately for Paul, the man was dominant in the Greco-Roman culture and as well as the Jewish culture. So it was easy for him to place. A synagogue elder would never be a woman, right?
No, they can't even sit together, right? I mean, they have a different place.
Exactly. The synagogue elder would not be a woman. The bishop in the Greco-Roman world was never a woman. So he didn't want to change that order. Imagine then Paul came and said, now man and woman is co-heirs. Either of them can be an elder, and all of that he taught. They would have told, hello, you have to leave this town and go. We don't want to upset the current order that we have.
What about now then, Pastor?
So we have to work within our culture right now and see how we can draw those principles and work. Do we change order? Do we want to upset the order? May not work.
Correct.
But we can call the positions into commitment to the gospel. And that would change it. It would make it absolutely fantastic, actually. Even in whatever forms of culture that the culture would be definitely affected by the gospel, making it beautiful. Pastor Sindhyapan, you're very quiet. Your quietness is making me uneasy, actually. Pastor, come out with all that ferociousness.
Whatever I understood as a simple teachings from Ephesians and Colossians and all this Hostafel text have been made so complicated by all these writings. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, see, there is we again and again we are talking about changing the order. Now, why should you first of all change the order? Okay, so Paul apparently believed that is the God-given order. Okay, of husband leading the family, the father leading the family. Okay, so again there's been so much of talk about changing the order.
We're telling Paul did not change the order. That's what we are trying to say.
But why is it required to change the order?
We don't need to.
You don't need to. See, listen. See, the whole the idea of you see, the male chauvinism has been there, and today there's a opposite of that, the feminist movement. So all these kinds of things are there. Okay, so but see, there was no need to change the order that time and also now. Okay, and we are like we have concluded a long time back. Yes, women can play a role in the church. Now, of course, we said, that the complementarian view, egalitarian view, and all those kind of things. But there's no need to change the order. You see, the master and slaves, for instance, master and slaves. Okay. I interpreted it always it's a work culture. Okay, work culture of master and slave. Now today you may not have master and slave, but you have boss. Okay, and when we report to the CMD or whosoever XYZ ABC. Okay, there is an order, so it is very easily applicable. So the basic idea is how the social structure existed as a family, as a basic unit of the society. Okay, and the workplace. Okay, the workplace, be it a business or be it a workplace, whatever is defined as masters and slaves. Okay, so these are the two primary units that he is addressing. Okay, so what you are in your house, what you are in your workplace or business or whatever, and what you are in the church. Okay, so I mean, so the dynamics, the beautiful dynamics has been put in. How a master and slave.
So, Pastor, the one part that I differ from what you're saying is that it is not a God-given order. Paul is working within the order of the culture at that time, and he's using the gospel to correct the deficits. That's all.
I totally disagree. As you said, as you are also disagreeing with me. See, the God-given order. Okay, we come back to the same thing. Okay, husband is the head of the wife, and Jesus is the head of the husband, man, and the father is the head of Jesus. Okay, so be strongly. We means maybe some of you, some of us who are there in this group might ascribe to or subscribe to my viewpoint. Okay, now George's viewpoint, whatever we still don't understand joint headship. Okay, no, whatever. See, we many of us believe that there is a divinely appointed order. There's no need to change. Okay, anywhere, you know, every institution has an order. Okay, and my family being a basic institution instituted by God. Okay, so now there is an order, and there's no need to change the order. See, it is not that Paul was afraid that the gospel cannot be preached, you know, if he changes the order. Paul, in my opinion, Paul did not find the need to change the order. Okay, that's what he did. See, I think for me, the first and foremost thing is the family life, which Paul talks about in Ephesians 5. Okay, and he calls it as a mystery. I speak as a mystery. Okay, so what the world thinks, you know, why submission is a wrong word. It is not a wrong word. What is wrong in submission? Okay, there's nothing wrong. I'm submission to my man. What is wrong in submission? There's nothing wrong in submission. Okay, that's what Paul is bringing out. He said, there's nothing wrong in submitting to your master or a person who is a boss in your workplace. Okay, at the same time, he's saying, masters, you take care of those who are working under you. See, in principle, all these things were there in the Old Testament. Old Testament, it was all there. The order was there, as we say, like, you know, God, like as we discussed. The Greco-Roman culture had their own understanding of the family, and the Jewish people who have the Old Testament scriptures with them, they had degenerated, and it's kind of a post-exilic corrupted social life that they were living. Okay, so both the Gentiles as well as the Jewish community, they were not living the way that God had divinely appointed. Okay, so they all have come into the church. They all have come into the church now. So Paul is basically, see, for me, the key thing is the pinnacle of the whole thing is the relationship between husband and wife, the dynamic so beautifully brought forth. Okay, there was no need to change the order. Okay, the woman cannot be the head of the family. Okay, the man is the head of the family always. Okay, man in the sense husband or a father, whatever. He's the head of the family. Okay, so we come back to the same thing. So we, at least I strongly believe that's a divine order. There was no need to change the order. Okay, it was not that Paul was afraid, you know, that if I change the order, gospel cannot be preached. Okay, that they will throw me out. No, that's not it. Why should we change the order? The order which God had kept is corrupted. With the dynamics within the order was corrupted. God always meant the husband, the head of the family, or even the church, the pastor, anybody who is the head of the congregation, who is overseeing the congregation, be it the bishop or elder or pastor, whoever it is, they are supposed to be taking responsibilities, and they were supposed to be serving the congregation. The shepherd is to serve the people. Okay, that is the dynamic that he is bringing in. Okay, even the later on, the Peter's talking about the shepherds, in first Peter chapter 5. It is very beautiful. See, the whole thing is, we are here to serve, we are here to take responsibility, and we are here to serve the people whom we lead. Okay, the servant leadership is what is called for at any point of time. Okay, so starting with the family, which he says that the relationship with the husband and wife is a mystery. The way Jesus has loved the church and laid down his life for her, the husband has to love his wife and lay down his life for his wife. And the same thing with the children, as you said, they were considering the children as a property and wife as a property and all those kind of things. So Paul is restoring back what was there in the Old Testament. The fathers were to teach the children, and the father and the mother together, they bring up the children. So that is very beautifully brought out in these chapters, both in Titus as well as in First Timothy. Okay, where it says the woman should have, and the woman should have, the woman should teach the younger women to love their husbands, to take care of the children. So there is First Timothy chapter 5, when he's talking about widows also, he's talking very clearly. Okay, so this husband and wife together, they nurture the children, they bring up the children. But again, as the head of the family, the husband has the primary responsibility. It's not bossing over, I'm the head of the family, so you serve me. It's not. The husband, being the head of the family, has got a primary responsibility, and he is accountable. He is accountable. The responsibility and accountability is very clearly put on the leader, be it the husband or the father or the pastor or the master, okay, who's in a workplace or in a business structure. So the dynamics are very clearly whatever the corrupt man, corrupt society, be it in the form of Roman Greco culture or in the Jewish culture, the corrupt society has been shown. This is the way God has ordained. This is the way God has ordained the family to be. This is the way God has ordered the society to be, the workplace to be. These are two main areas. Okay, and he brings it into the church. As a church, as a family, the elders and deacons, or the elder women, younger women, whatever, and the widows. See, they lived as a community, so they took care. See, now today, one of the things, that most of the culture that we say biblical culture, okay, actually it is a Western culture. It is the Britishers and the Americans who brought the gospel initially to us. Okay, we are blindly following them. Okay, what makes us to wear shoes? Okay, in fact, in the context of our Indian climate, okay, the first thing we would love to do is remove the shoes and throw out. Okay, and the cleanliness. Okay, the cleanliness. Okay, it is part of the thing. Okay, so most of the people remove the shoes because they wear the shoes everywhere outside, and they want to remove the shoes and come inside the house. Okay, whereas the Western culture, it might have been different. Maybe the place was very cold, the people are wearing shoes and socks, and probably the place are very clean. Okay, you do not know. But sadly, now the bride comes with the white dress, okay, with the best man. Okay, where did we get this from? It's not a biblical culture. Okay, see, it is something that Westerners taught us, so we are just blindly following. Okay, so we are not culturally relevant. We think.
So, Pastor, if Paul was now going to write about our culture, he would have addressed, let the woman be as white as the gown she wears. I'm just giving you an idea. That's how he addressed it. Basically, how he wrote many things was taking pictures and snapshots from culture and then build the gospel into it nicely, how the gospel should work in that.
Pastor, I just somehow feel that, it was the order or what he was putting forth was not really gender biased if we take today's context and today's time. Those days, maybe it would have to be based on gender because that's how the culture worked. But today, there are so many homes where they're single parents. How do you address that then? There are homes where a husband may be not having a job, and then the wife had to take certain responsibilities up.
See, there's no, see, Baba, there's no problem with the responsibilities. See, there are many families, both husband and wife are alive and they're living together as believers, okay? And the husband is not taking responsibility. Okay?
Right.
There are all kinds of hues and colors are there, okay? See, Bible, basically, it is cross-cultural, cross-historical, okay? It is for all times. So we don't go into the letter of the law. We let us go into the spirit of the law, okay? Spirit of the law, where now naturally, okay, if the husband is not there, okay, or the woman is singled out because of divorce or whatever reason it is, there's a whole different dynamics that's set in place. Whereas the society, see, even so much to say, okay, it is after the Second World War, okay, at least the history that we know, the society that we know that existed before, okay, so we need to see a tremendous acceleration of things that have been taking place in the last 120 years. The 20th century has been a tremendous year, okay. One of the reasons, even if you actually look at the gospel being preached, especially in the COVID time, I may be wrong, but I have a lot of reasons to believe what God spoke to me, okay. After 1905, the Azusa Street revival, the Spirit of God was poured out. Okay, gospel was preached. So the Spanish flu, which is almost like 100 years back. Okay, 1918, I suppose. Okay, 1918, 19. So now we are in 2019, COVID-19, what is so called. Okay, so God was speaking to me. See, if you actually look at the history of this past 120 years of the gospel, okay, the society has changed. Now we have got huge changes, okay. Now nobody is going to say, okay, now a single woman, okay, she has to find a man to be under his authority. No, we are not going to say that because there are so many single women who are running the families. There are widows who are running the families, okay. But the system that existed before that was different, okay. See, what we call about the Victorian culture, the Victorian purity and all those kind of things, the Britishers, now they brought in a lot of things. So there's lots of things. But after the First World War, after the Second World War, with the science and technology coming, Bible getting printed, I mean, that is after the Cultural Revolution, Renaissance and all that, in the 16th, 17th century, okay? So there's been a tremendous acceleration of gospel being preached. Gospel being preached was not the churches were there before, but if I look at the Indian church history, or many of the third world countries where the gospel has been preached, okay. See, basically, these are the churches that God is indigenous. Like we are somehow trying to learn everything from the West. As I said, all these articles are written by the Westerners, okay. You know, we still think that the Western guys have got a lot of things to share. God in his unique way, through the Holy Spirit, has revealed lots of things to the Indian authors, Indian preachers. Okay, we are not bringing it out. That's all. Okay, we are still following all these kind of.
No, Pastor. One thing is that Jeff is dead against the Western this thing. Okay, so
I know, Judge. But
Pastor, I was reading all this, so it just came to my mind that is there an issue if we have a lady bishop? Why do we don't see bishops as ladies? But here in the article it says if she's right, she's good in teaching, bishops have certain roles that they have to play. But I don't understand, is there any issue if there's a
small job.
Can I say something? I can say some practical scenario. Here, we are in the United States. So there are so many women pastors, and this has happened to one church. And one of my another, good friend of mine, he is a priest in a Jacobite church. He said this verse. It's funny. He just shared as a joke. I was going through that and I saw a notice board that stating that the pastor is on delivery leave, so the church will beyond, after 2 months, So, I mean, that is not, a usual scenario, but it should be just one-man show. It should be just a group of people, always running the, show. That may be the ideal case, in my opinion.
Sure,
See,
but that example
you
does
see-
not indicate woman cannot be. Just
No,
because she's a child bearing. Yeah.
1 minute. Listen. See, God's appointed order is very clear. Okay. Now, I don't say that a woman cannot be a bishop or anything of that sort. Okay. I cannot biblically prove that a woman cannot be a bishop.
That ends the case, Pastor. You just said it. Thank you. That is fantastic.
No, Judge, this is the whole problem here. See, that's what I'm saying. See, we are not happy. At least I'm not happy about all these discussions that we have had.
Why,
Okay?
Pastor? We are having good discussions.
No.
Why
That's
are
okay,
you
Judge.
unhappy? You
According
should
to
be
you.
happy. We are discussing.
Judge, see, you have a right to believe that it's a good discussion. I have a right to believe it has not been a good discussion.
Why, Pastor?
Why not? See, that's up to you.
What?
Judge,
Why are you saying it's not a good discussion?
No, Judge. See, I don't want to get into an argument. Okay.
No argument. I want to know why you are not thinking it's a good. We have
Leave
all
it
thought
aside.
through it.
No,
We have read the
leave it aside.
scriptures. We have
Leave it aside.
understood. We have
No,
read
no.
scholars. We have all
See-
shared our views.
No. It's okay. You all can share your views. Okay. But at the end of the day, see, these kinds of things have been debated. Okay. These kinds of things have been debated. Okay. Within our New Life Fellowship. See, now we do believe
Pastor,
that
you have debated, but none of us have debated. No, many of our people here have never understood,
Yeah,
even read this text in this
yes,
detail.
George, it's okay. No, but there's no end to debate. Okay. That's why, see, that we are only gendering strife. Okay. As he says, we have been gendering strife. What is the practical?
Why are you saying we have strife? We are not. This is called a Socratic discussion.
See,
We are discussing,
Judge, leave.
thinking through, but no strife. None of us have any complexes or
No,
any
we have.
hurt or pain or anything here.
Sir,
Pastor, if you are hurt, I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to do
It's
that.
not. Why should I be hurt? There's nothing to be hurt about. See, George, listen to me.
Where is the
No,
strife
no.
you are telling, Pastor?
George, there's nothing to be. What is there to be hurt about? Are you beating me to be hurt about?
Then where is
Okay,
the
1
strife?
minute.
You said
You-
strife. Where is the
Yeah,
strife?
it's a strife
Where is the
because
strife?
no. Let us practically talk about. Okay, now a woman is ready. Okay, to be a bishop, and she has not been ordained. Please come up with that situation. Okay, or a woman is ready to take an apostolic mantle and go around traveling. Okay. Now, why I'm saying this, George? See, now we are all part of one network. Okay. Now we are all senior people. Okay. Now we are going to pass it on to the next generation. Okay. Now, Jeff Reed may have his own convictions, or any different people, they have their own convictions in their network of churches. Okay. Now, this topic has been debated many times over in our New Life network of churches, and many of the senior pastors, including me and many people in the Bombay New Life, we all have discussed these things. Okay.
Wonderful, Pastor.
Okay. Discuss these things. And we have chosen, okay, not to answer this question. Okay, for a simple reason. Okay. Are Baba, if a lady is really qualified, she's been called of God. See, also please understand, okay, what seems good to us and to the Holy Spirit. See, that a person says, I'm called, okay, it is always approved. The laying on of hands. Laying on of hands is one of the basic doctrines, according to Hebrews chapter 6. What is the laying on of hands? Okay. Paul uses it many different times, even 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy, I think he used it twice or thrice. Okay. And there is a laying on of hands. Okay. And he's also in the pastoral epistles. There are pastoral epistles, right? You read 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy. How many times he talks about laying on of hands? Okay. Don't be hasty to lay hands on any person. Don't be partaker of his sin. Okay. Now, let us say for practical purposes, okay, a woman is well qualified, committed to the Lord, passionate about serving God, and she has proven her capacity to be a bishop. Okay. And other people also approve, lay hands and approve. There's nothing wrong. She can be a bishop. Who's telling she cannot be a bishop? Okay. Now, in this context, there have been few people who have been ordained in the Bombay New Life structure as pastors. Some ladies have been ordained as pastors. Okay. But in Karnataka, we have chosen not to ordain anybody, any of the ladies, to be pastors in our network of churches. Okay. But there are people who are, if there is a need, if there is a need and if there's a person who is qualified, we can ordain them as pastors.
Yeah,
Or if a person says, okay, I have an apostolic ministry, okay, I'm going to go, okay, with another lady, okay, I'm going to go and I will go and pioneer a church in Bhutan, okay, go Baba, okay, go and do it, okay. Whether you may say it's a male chauvinism that will not allow them to go, okay. You may say that.
We are saying the same thing as I'm saying at this point.
See, George, see, listen. So therefore,
towards the end,
why are we again and again arguing about these things? Okay,
I'm not arguing, Pastor. We are just talking about it.
No, there's no need. See, we actually, in my opinion, we waste a lot of time. Lots of time we have wasted in this, especially in this unit.
For you have discussed it at your discuss in your leadership. None of these young people sitting here have discussed these things. None of them have talked about things. So allow them to discuss, Pastor. Allow them to talk it out and think through it, Pastor.
Yeah, but what I'm saying,
when we are talking, by stopping that argument, they don't have the opportunity to know the scriptures, look at the context of the scriptures and understand it. We can definitely bring now from your
point. See, I am not saying
you are saying waste of time. No. I don't understand what is
it. Because we have
discussed the articles, we have discussed the issues, we are discussing it. It's part of the writing the competency.
George,
waste of time that I cannot accept, Pastor.
No, George, just listen to me. Listen, again, I don't want to get into argument. Listen to me.
Pastor, this I want to argue with you. What are you saying? Waste of time, I want to know.
No, because see, the whole discussion, or you are outrightly saying, okay, this is not the order, okay?
Pastor,
this is not appointed order, okay?
Pastor, I'm giving you
all the discussions are going on, okay, from that premise that this is not God's appointed order.
Pastor,
okay? Paul didn't want to change the order because he was afraid of losing the people.
Many scholars are saying that. I'm not saying it.
See, George, scholars may say.
Pastor, what are we arguing? We are looking at scholars. We are thinking you hold a value like that. You please write it like that. But you give us the freedom to go and talk and discuss and argue and think through it. But don't say waste of time, Pastor, because all of us here have learned.
See, George, you should always discuss from a neutral point. Okay, you should not discuss from.
Pastor, I have done all views. I have actually supported the complementary view last week. I showed everything in the whole thing, how you can use the complementary view. I'm not against it. I have told all the views. I told how all the views can work. Ultimately, it is not the view that you hold. It's the gospel that will matter. That's what I'm saying. But you use the word waste of time. It puts all of us down, Pastor. We are working hard. All of us are sitting here 2 to 3 hours and working hard. To see, we have finished it amazingly. I can't believe it. Within such a short period, we have finished about 9 articles, which was very difficult. I thought we'll never share it.
I'm also sitting and listening. I'm also reading all the articles. Okay, it's not that I'm not reading the articles. I'm also sitting and listening. Okay, I'm not saying no. See, that is one of the reasons I want to keep quiet. So don't ask me to speak. Okay, just
you have to get involved in the discussion. You have to get involved.
See, George,
but you come and say it's waste of time, then it makes no
sense. You also use lots of statements. Okay, these are bullshit. Okay, so you also use a lot of statements like that.
So, Pastor,
you also use lots of statements.
Pastor, what I'm saying is, I am not talking about our time here, the course. I say certain views I don't agree with. That's all I'm saying. But I never said that other view is wrong or I trash it. No, I supported that view also because I know how that view also can be used correctly according to the gospel.
See, that's right, George. See, now, at the end of the day, okay, we are again and again, see, now, after all these discussions, okay, now, see, there are things that we don't understand. Okay, we have to.
But all of us, you take the junior people, they've all started thought through it. They're all able to come to clear ideas now. Okay, this is how it works. This is how Paul's ideas work. This is where the situation is. Now, these are the views that we hold as New Life Fellowship. Now, you are selling some of the views. It's good for us to know all those things. Now, in all of our, whatever we believe or whatever this thing, we are still following whatever the New Life taught us. We used to follow those culture and tradition. We don't have to. We don't change that. We don't have not. I may have an idea of oneness, but in that oneness, I still see men only lead in this thing and women submit to this thing. But the man and the woman together lead. Yeah.
Pastor, see, when we have teenage girls at home, my daughters are all 18 and 17, 16 and all that. There are so many questions they come out with. So, I mean, keeping the essence of the gospel in mind. We'll have to, when we discuss, these are questions that they always throw at you. You know, what is wrong if a certain, if a girl takes up this role, or what doesn't, so even when I was reading, I was thinking, many a time we don't address these things. There's nothing wrong who leads. The order is intact. There is nothing that, we want to bring it down or pull it down. But when children ask, we have to give them, especially in today's time, we are not asking them to be conformed to patterns of the world. But at the same time, they need to get a reason. Today's children cannot be just told that because I am telling you have to believe, or because, somebody, it doesn't work like that.
And earlier it was just if you told a child, they will have to listen. Today they have the internet.
Exactly.
What all they read.
Let me tell you. See, yesterday I had a discussion with one of our senior, he's now, okay, one of our senior members of our church, New Life. Okay. He was putting the same question. He also asked me the same question. 1 Timothy 2:15. What does it mean? Okay. How do we answer? Okay. He has got 2 teenage girls. I mean, a little older. So he was asking. So we had 45 minutes of discussion. Okay. So I'm not saying that we cannot discuss, we cannot shut the mouths of people. We cannot, we should shut them out. No, it's not that. But at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge there are things that we don't understand. Okay. He was also talking about all the feminist kind of, these are the kind of believers are there. These are the kind of questions they ask. Yesterday we discussed around 45 minutes with somebody, okay, on phone. So the thing is, see, it is today's thing. People ask, okay, why did God go and tell the people to destroy the women and children and animals? Okay. Yesterday we were discussing the Deuteronomy is written there that a man goes and rapes a lady, okay, and then he has to marry her. He has to give the money and he has to marry her. So the question that a teenager is asking, so does it not violate? Does not the punishment should have been very severe? This was a discussion yesterday we were having. Many discussions. 1 Timothy 2:15 also was part of the discussion yesterday. Okay. Now he is asking. The girl is asking, is it not fair? How God is not fair? Okay. The man should have been punished. The man should have been punished in a greater way. Okay. Why was God telling in the law he should get married to her? The girl is not wanting to get married, Baba. He is raped. Does not the lady have a dignity? Okay. Why is God telling this guy has to get married? This man has to get married. Okay. And he has to pay the money, whatever it is. He quoted 2 scriptures. One in Deuteronomy, I think other thing is in Exodus. But it talks about the same thing. Okay. So the women are not given the rights. Okay. Given the rights. So the woman feels less dignified. Okay. There are many discussions are there. I'm not saying that we can shut the mouths of people. No, we cannot do that. But what we have to again, what is the answer that you can give? Okay. So we need to, I was telling them, see, God was the ruler, the civil code, the criminal code, everything was given by God to those people. Now we cannot apply the same civil code and criminal code to us, okay, because God was ruling them, he gave them. Okay. Now, at the same time, I would say, let God be true and every man a liar. Okay. So I have to probably justify God in a way. Okay. Justify God letting the man go scot-free. Okay. What is the big deal? He can rape any number of girls and get married to any number of people. Everybody will be dumped in one room, right? And ill-treated. Okay. No, that's why Jesus himself is saying, this is not the way it was supposed to be. Okay. And I think Matthew 19, wherever Jesus is saying, no, God ordained the man to leave the father and mother and be attached to his wife. And the divorce is not originally God's plan. Okay. So all those things is silly. So there are so many things that we can dispute. Okay, and especially in America, in all the Western culture. Now, we are also catching up with the Western culture. Our children also are catching up with the human secularism and secular humanism. What is called secular humanism, and all kinds of things we are getting into. Okay, so it is definitely we need to answer them. The women are considered to be equal today. They can do anything what the man can do. Okay. All those issues are there. That's why I'm for all practical purposes, I'm just simply saying that as you are asking the question, someone was asking the question, can a woman be a bishop? Yes, she can be a bishop. Okay, what is wrong if she's a bishop? Why there are no bishops? Yeah, let so many women come and say that we are qualified to be bishops, or in our own network of churches, we say, okay, this lady is qualified to be a pastor. Okay, so now whether male chauvinists will do it, that's a question that the feminists will ask. Okay, whether male chauvinists will do it. Will they ordain a woman to be a pastor? Okay, see, these are all highly debatable questions. Okay, that when it comes to it, we will sail through it. Okay, these are hypothetical questions.
No, Pastor, those are good questions.
Yeah, good questions.
Very good questions. And we
Yeah.
should be able to have already, at least at us at the leadership perspective, we have sat together, we have discussed, we argue out these things. We look at the scripture, we look at the context, we look at the culture, which the scholars are bringing us. We are able to get to a place where we now have also be able to expound the text to them, exegete the text to them. Otherwise, earlier I could not do any of these things. I used to give some vague answers, and the people who heard me also knew that this fellow doesn't know anything. That is the way it was. Now, today we are not like that. Today we are able to tell this is what it means. This is how it was. This is the context. These are the possibilities. At least we leave it at the possibilities. We will not put our foot down and say this is it. Because even if you take Stephen B. Clark or others, possible, this is the most possible. There are these many views about it. This is the most possible because of this. That is what they are writing. So, Pastor, what I'm saying
what I was telling is, see, there are Indian authors are there. There are Indian Bible colleges are there in India. Okay, there are theologians in India. Okay, so why do we always go for the Stephen Clarks and the XYZ and ABC? Okay,
Pastor?
Yeah. See, this is what I was trying to tell, George. What I was trying to tell. This past 100 years, 120 years, there's been a major shift. Okay, it is God's orchestrated shift of preaching the gospel to all the nations, for all the peoples of the world. So indigenous churches have raised up. Okay, indigenous churches have raised up. One of the good examples is our own New Life Fellowship, starting with Bombay. Okay, why are we so convinced about this build model? Because we have practiced it, not to the perfect way, but it is an indigenous move of God. So there are so many indigenous churches, theologians, scholars whom God has raised up in India.
Well, one more thing, Pastor. For example, David Nerenge. We read about David Nerenge in Acts, right? All of you remember?
I was about to say that article. David Nerenge is one of the best articles.
He's not an American guy.
Yeah.
So Jeff is pulling as much material from across the globe writers. For example, that guy who wrote Education, one Chan or something was there. Again, he's taking from a Far Eastern author.
It was Francis Chan, I think the last unit of Acts.
Not Francis Chan, Edmund Chan. Or some other Chan was taken. Basically, this guy is against the Western paradigm. He wants to bring the Western paradigm down completely. You constantly, when you get to their meetings and all, they are constantly striking the Western paradigm, which comes out of the Reformation and all of those things. They're saying, no, let's go back to the early church. We look to the early church, and he is pulling out scholars who have written very well, well researched into scholarly material, having done exegesis, having gone through the archaeological records, having gone through other texts during the biblical times, that they can see what kind of writings it was, why did Paul write like this, because there was common writing like that already in the thing. Way of writing was so those kind of scholarly work, whether it is in America or in other places, he's pulling that all together. He's not going with the Reformation paradigm scholars in that way. So he's definitely non-Western, and he's trying to bring in. If we can present Indian authors, Indian articles, for example, research in SABC and all are bringing out many Indian context. My wife did her PG just recently. She did an assessment of the frustration of women among pastors in a paradigm, in our paradigm, in terms of the context of ours. She did a work. It's excellent work actually, and the way she has she got thrown out of the. She should have got the best student award, but she got thrown out. My wife had to address the most sensitive thing there. But she has done a excellent work in terms of taking actual feedback, and the frustration of women who are, who serve in a pastoral family, not able to have any place or recognition, but always the man gets a recognition, and that kind of a scenario. So there is frustration in our system, and our authors, our people also need to start academically thinking. And so we can, so for example, the competency that we write, for example, now, the competency that we all will write will become a legacy that we can leave behind for our next generation, from our culture, our context. We can write, no? Pastor, you are right. I think we should write and create some excellent.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I use the word wasting time. What I'm saying is, see, we can have a much, I mean, in my opinion, okay, we should have a much healthier discussion, okay, healthier discussion, which would probably help us to move towards a better understanding, okay.
Pastor, where was the unhealthy part? I can't understand this unhealthy
anyway, George, see, this is highly.
But Pastor, we need to correct it. If there is unhealthy discussion, we should change. For example, if I use the word bullshit, I should use it. I agree with you. But we need to correct that, because we are going to study together for another 3-4 years.
Anyway, George, that I'll personally talk to you. Okay, I don't know whether I can talk to you and convince you, but I'll talk to you when I have time. Okay. See,
I'm coming, no, Pastor. I'm there with you. You can.
No. You are coming to minister to our church. So
no, Monday I'm post ministry, Pastor. I'm with you. One full day you can hammer me.
I am not prepared, George, to hammer you. Okay. So anyway, what I'm saying is, what you see, that today's generation is not going to listen to anything. But I was just discussing, okay, with this person. Okay, he's one of the very senior members of the church, and he's also in the pastoral team of New Life Fellowship. Okay, now you are discussing. See, now we have to answer. Okay, my own sister's son is there. Okay, he's not fully come to the Lord. He's in America. Many times I thought I'll connect him to Subhash, but I don't even think if I recommend somebody, he may not even look at that person. Okay, so I just left it. See, there are
where is he, Pastor?
I don't know where he is. Also, he's working somewhere. He's a young guy, and my sister's daughter also is there.
Is he on the East Coast, Pastor?
Yeah, somewhere that's East Coast only.
Oh, good.
I'll let you know. I really thought of it. See, the kind of questions they ask, okay, the present day people, the question they ask is very different. Now, why? See, now there are gray area. We don't even try to find out what 1 Timothy 2:15 is. Okay, I don't want to. Okay, because I'm not going to form a doctrine out of that one scripture. And always I have held the view. I have not read so many articles, but I always held the view that Paul was talking about a particular context of women using the newfound liberty, that they were trying to disrupt the servers and things like that. And which now, when I read this introduction, in the Bible Project, when I read all this introduction, it was always confirming whatever I guessed. Okay, so we don't have to break our head in trying to find out what it means. Okay, the women.
Let us break our head. That is what we are trying to say, no, Pastor. See, Pastor, you are saying you have been with the scriptures for a long time, but you take Suma or Robin or Chai. We have not been with the scriptures. They are opening these things for the first time in their life.
Yeah.
They are first time able to see, oh, there are so many views on this. Oh, this is what they believe. Oh, this is what it is. Our opportunity to be equipped tomorrow to handle
right.
Young.
You're 100% right. You're 100% right. So what I am saying is, we should go from a place of a neutral point. Okay, instead of hammering. Okay, all this. What is this? Complementary, or this is, no, I forgot which is complementary. Okay, instead of hammering all the people left, right, and center for some 3 sessions, 4 sessions. Okay, then afterwards, then we try to find a neutral way of explaining. Okay, so that doesn't produce a healthy discussion.
No, Pastor,
okay, that's why it is not healthy.
Pastor, what I'm trying to say is, for example, I'm facilitating. My idea is all of us are stuck in the complementarian paradigm. I have talked to ladies okay, sisters, they are very comfortable in the complementary paradigm. They are happy there. They are not even taught outside it. So the idea was, hey, this is called a complementarian. They didn't even know that it is called a complementarian paradigm. Nobody knew it. Now we gave them a word. But then why are we calling complementarian? There must be some other views also. So now to jerk somebody out of the complementarian paradigm and also at least get them to think there are other views, Christian views, biblical views, written by very powerful New Testament scholars who are lovers of Jesus, that there are different views held. And let us look at that view. I never said that any of you should follow any view that I said. I said these are the views I have. To sometimes shake the boat a little bit, I have used some strong words and things like that. But that got everybody to think. Like, for example, I remember one evening Subha was disturbed, very disturbed after. So that disturbance would actually get her to start looking and thinking and reading again. I want to know now, I'm disturbed. I have to rethink my theology. I have to rethink my ideas. So that is something that I regularly do as a facilitator. I will rock the boat sufficiently so that it will come out of our comfort zone, and I want you to think. But I know that I also have to settle it later. So I brought in the complementarian paradigm. I myself defended it. I myself showed a view how that can work. The reason being, it shouldn't unsettle it such a way that you don't go unsettled for a too long a time. I also have to see our own cultural context, which we need to take it very carefully, that we don't upset the culture so much that tomorrow people will say, hey, if you go to that church, everything is gone. It's like my dad said, he used to brush his teeth till he went for dentistry. Once he got his BDS and MDS, he stopped brushing his teeth. So that shouldn't happen. So we have to, be careful in the way we are sensitive to the culture. But for us here, we are like a research group. We are here to sit and think for our culture. We are here to sit and think for our churches, because if our church people, I'm telling you, many of our pastors, I'm openly talking, many of our pastors are not in a place of competent to answer many of the questions. They will give very standard dialogues, very incompetent responses they are able to give, not able to support or anything. They're not able to give any evidence, nothing. They're not even able to even support one standard, what do you call for it, a formula they will give, which somebody has told some time back, and we follow that formula. So we are now saying we will not be there. We will choose as a generation to be well equipped as much as possible, to understand what our new life culture is, to understand what the world is talking, to understand what the historical paradigm, how it got transferred to us. What are the people, how did the gospel go through from AD 30 to AD 2022? What are the changes that happened? How did God involve and intervene? And we have to think through all these things. So I feel that kind of a research, when it is research, we have to pull each other's. And I really appreciate Pastor, because many times you come in strong and you put your opinion very strongly. It stimulates me to even argue, because you won't believe it. After we started these sessions with the Pauline thing, I have developed an entire understanding and theology of community, which I am blown away with the idea, because I've never seen it otherwise. I have never seen the scripture in that view. But today I have I can write a book on how community is God's primary idea. It's not an idea of this world. It was God's idea, and how community is supposed to work is brilliantly. That's what the whole Bible is all about. I could not have done it if we didn't rack each other's brains out. So when we do the Socratic discussion, we will be able to put our thoughts, our thinking is stimulated, and we are able to think and put our thoughts onto the paper. Otherwise, what we are going to do, we are going to cut paste. We'll cut paste from Eastward, we'll cut paste from Stephen B. Clark, we'll put it there and write one sentence and we'll move on. That's not what we want. We want us to think. So in our Socratic discussion is where we argue, we debate, and we think, so that tomorrow, many times when many argument came, I went back to the scripture again. I read again and again and again and again till I got a clarity. Hey, this is what it is. When I read Stephen B. Clark, you won't believe it. I was, during that time when I was doing the cohort, it was not like this. We used to read it, the entire article in the cohort. It took 5 years. What a waste of time, okay? I read the entire article and you won't believe it. Each sentence we used to argue. You know how we used to go? You know what the pace we were going? Every time, because I sat in a mixed church environment. I had people who was Baptist, Pentecostal, I had a Catholic, and all of these people are sitting together. So every statement we read from Stephen B. Clark went into an explosion. We had to argue it out. But you know what? Because I argued it out, I'm able to have better clarity about how things are. Otherwise, if we read this and then we say this is New Life idea, we'll go with New Life idea. We're not going to have an idea. We're not going to do proper research. At least at the end of it, you and me, I think some of you wrote in the last two papers, some of you wrote biblical theology. Subhash, Suma, and all. Excellent biblical theology. You have really sat and read through all of Paul's letters and brought out a fantastic biblical theology on establishing, for example. I'm asking all of you, have you ever thought of establishing and read the whole of I never done it before.
Yeah.
Now today as pastors, we have such a grip over the Pauline literature which was used for establishing, that we are able to better answer people, better give the reason for the faith that we are following. So I would not want us to stop arguing. Please don't stop arguing. We should pull each other's idea, pull as much, shake as much as possible. Otherwise, we will not be able to really think through. Yes, we can close. Pastor Cynthia, can you pray and close, because we just crossed time.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for the time that we could, Lord, discuss the scriptures. God, we pray that even as we learn together, God, we pray that you give us an understanding, an insight, as we are, Lord, bombarded with various kinds of doctrines, various kinds of theological, Lord, spectrums, Lord, that we are facing all kinds of things, oh God. Lord, we pray that we'll be able to rightly divide the word of God, Lord, for a generation to come. Dear God, Lord, the future generations, we'll be able to speak to them. We'll be able to prepare the generation, oh God, for, Lord, to carry on the gospel work, Lord, to carry on the ministry, Lord, to defend the faith, Lord, and to propagate the faith. Dear God, we pray that help us, that all our studying, all our understanding, Lord, will help us to raise up that generation, Lord, and we'll be able to give to them, Lord, with clarity as to what God has spoken to us, that we'll be able to pass it on to another generation. We thank you for George and for this build ministry. And Lord, all this time and this resource material and all these things, Lord, that has been invested, Lord, into many people in India. We pray for this to be a blessing, Lord, to people. We thank you and we praise you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone. God bless you all.
Yes.
Yeah, God bless you. Good night.
God bless.